you used the metaphor of an automobile to describe the significance of Bitcoin.
An automobile?
Yeah, you were talking about, I think it was like pick your own adventure with Bitcoin.
Oh, yes.
Yes. You could have the old beat up truck that you know how to work on, and you're kind of like the crypto anarchist, decentralized guy, or you could have the truck that like I have a truck I don't know how to fix, so I'm kind of a car shitcoin was the joke. Like, could you rehash that metaphor, because I thought that was so illuminating.
Sure. So one thing I point out in that show was that when the car became popular and affordable enough for Americans to own at scale, it became a symbol of freedom, because people could leave their city without really relying on anyone else. They didn't have to rely on these centralized systems. They could just get in their car and go. So that was like a symbol of freedom. And, it's one of those things where some people to this day preserve that freedom tremendously. Like I had a former boss that literally would kind of rebuild his cars from scratch and knew how to fix every nut and bolt in them. And so he's about as
that's a don't trust verify.
Yeah, he's about as self-sovereign as you can get with vehicles. Yeah. Whereas other people will just lease their vehicle or just still use public transportation or whatever, and so they're fully reliant on the system. And the point is, you can kind of choose your own adventure along that path. Usually, we're all kind of shitcoiners in some aspect, whether it's food, whether it's transportation. There's some area that we're just not focused on
because we have to trust.
Yeah, because and so money is one of the more important ones that people probably should be paying attention to. But there's still going to be this spectrum of there's going to be people that are power users that want to have as much kind of self-control and mastery of it as possible. There are other people that say, well, look, I'm comfortable in my jurisdiction. Maybe it's Switzerland, maybe it's Singapore, whatever the case. They're comfortable in their jurisdiction to say, I'm happy to have a custodian hold it for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to worry about it, or maybe I'm 70 years old and I don't want to lose my keys or risk it. Even though there are plenty of people of that age that can, but there are some people that just they have enough going on.
Sure.
And the whole point is there's kind of this spectrum of choose your own adventure, and it goes from full private self custody, do it yourself multi-sig, to collaborative custody, to fully custodial relationships. And I think that optionality is really important. So for me, I never really lose sleep over how many people are choosing to self-custody use it in the best way. It's more are we doing enough to make it so that as many people as want to be power users can? Because I never would want someone to want to be a power user and just they don't have the resources to do it.
Right.
Whereas I can't do anything about that. If someone just doesn't want to be a power user, they don't want to fix their own car, they don't want to have their own multi-sig Bitcoin setup, or whatever the case may be, nothing I can do about that. I just want to make sure that anyone who wants to be self-sovereign can.
Yeah. It's kind of an opt-out thing again, right? Where you can just sort of opt out of the counterparty risk. But with that comes a lot of responsibility, right? If you do the full-blown multi-sig that you own and manage, well, don't mess it up, basically.
Yeah, there's responsibility.
There's no one to turn to, so if, let's assume Bitcoin succeeds and it does, on this mission of giving us the ideal money we talked about earlier, the decentralized spreadsheet in the sky that tracks favors that are rendered consensually and hopefully it's protected against coercive movements or modifications, let's say. How does that impact social organization more broadly? Does this start to lead us into a future that is more decentralized? If we decentralize the money successfully, how does that start to show up in society and social organization broadly?
I think
obviously you have to just guess here and speculate, but what do you think it looks at?
Yeah, so it starts with the assumption that Bitcoin gets massive and really starts to actually meaningfully displace currency and bond markets. That's basically the question. If you look at some of those older European maps, they'd be a lot more fractured than what it kind of consolidated into. And I think to some extent that kind of can reemerge in the sense that while governments will, in most cases, in most regions, still exist in various capacities, they have less of just a full control over everything. For example, the full banking system is currently under every country's control. They can go around that. And they have a much harder prospect of raising capital. Because again, if Egyptians, going back to that point, 20 to 30% money supply growth is happening, and there's very few ways to opt out of it other than power users getting into Bitcoin. even people that have gold stashed away, they still have bank accounts. There's always still some like residual stuff being just kind of opaquely taken from them by this seigniorage, this debasement.
Yeah.
And so it really just kind of closes the window of all these different issuers around the world for how much seigniorage they can get away with. Because they're competing with before they were competing basically with gold, or smaller countries are competing with the dollar. And so they're competing with something, if it's gold case, they're competing with something that grows at 2% a year and is really slow. If they're competing with the dollar, they're competing with something that grows at 7% a year but is pretty fast and usually gives you a yield that gives you some of that 7% back. Whereas now they're competing with Bitcoin that has zero long-term supply growth and is basically as fast as the dollar. And that's a much harder competition to go against. So I think it to the extent that Bitcoin gets another 10x or notably bigger from here and really kind of eats into fiat currency markets more, it really reduces the ability of all these different entities around the world to capture that scale of seigniorage.
Yeah, and then so that means less revenue for the centralized state. And then so does Bitcoin make government local again? Is that the direction we're headed?
It might. I think that the more conservative thing I would say is that it makes it more transparent in the sense that there might still be communities that want more government or want less government.
Yeah.
But at least they generally know what they're getting into. It's like they're saying, like, part of why we run, like my talk here was called Nothing Stops This Train. I was talking about the fiscal deficits. It's because we can't agree on how we're going to balance things. So this error just keeps spilling out as we fail to agree with each other. And in a Bitcoinized world, that can't really happen. There, like, defaults happen before that just runs forever. Yeah. And so basically it says, well, we can still pay for this, but we actually have to tax for it. And so, and taxes are transparent. That's why if you go back to wars in the past, that's why even like older emperors and kings would debase their coinage, because it was a way to kind of go around the transparent tax system. Yeah. People revolt over taxes more than they, keep track of the exact metallic content of their coins. So it kind of just reduces the attack surface of how much can I opaquely steal from you?
Yes.
And so then, different places are free to still kind of choose how they want to govern themselves. And there still might be pockets of authoritarianism, unfortunately, but at least that opaque part is a much less viable option.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.